Hi Crafty Friends, this is Jen from Katahdin Crafts, and I am here this week with a cute shaker card from the Hedgehog Hollow subscription box. February's theme was all about animal love, and it just so happens that our school team that my daughters and my son play on are called the Cougars. And so I thought that this could make a fun cougar card. And you guessed it correctly. The school colors are red, black, and white. To start off this project, I wanted to create my own shaker elements, and I've had this shrink film around the house for a while, so I thought I would put it to some use. The first thing I did was grabbed out that large paw from the Love You Forever set, and then the two small ones from the Puppy Love set, but we're going to pretend that they're cats. I think the last time we had to pretend that they were cats as well. But hey, it works for me. And I'm going to use the Remarkable Eclipse black ink and stamp these images right onto that shrink wrap or that shrink film. And I did stamp this twice, each image, and then I just make sure that it's fit right back into the MISTI correctly. And then I stamp again. And I wasn't really sure how the ink would work on the shrink film, but it worked perfectly. It didn't smudge and smear, and it also baked really well. So another use for the Eclipse black ink, the Remarkable ink, it really is quite remarkable. So I did up a whole sheet of those paw prints, and then I'm showing you here that I cut them all apart, and then I fussy cut each individual one out. And it did take some time, and I did some extra images as well, just so I could play around and see what it was like when I was doing the shrink wrap. Why do I keep calling it shrink wrap? It is shrink film or Shrinky Dinks, which I think is a brand name, but you get the idea. So I'm just, as you can see, fussy cutting around the edge. Each individual one didn't take me that long, but the fact that I had so many of them, so it did take a little bit. But it was, busy work, listen to a book. It's all good. Go around the edge of each one and make like a bubble die cut out of that. And this is just a fabulous way of making your own three-dimensional elements. And so you can make them out of any stamp that you own. You can make them 3D and thick and glossy. So it's just a different look to get from your stamps. And now I'm using an R29 marker and just filling in some of the stamped images. I wasn't sure at this point what exactly I would use and what I wouldn't, but I wanted to have a lot to choose from. And again, I was sticking with that whole red, white, and black theme. And as I'm laying this ink down, I am being careful not to go into the black ink again, just because it is a wet technique. And so you could make that ink react again, even though it's quite dry right now. And you also have to be careful that you don't touch it with your fingerprints too much, because again, it's just if you have a little bit of sweat going on, or, it makes it wet. So if you're going to get the image wet again, of course the ink will smear on this type of material because it's a slick surface. This particular one that I am using is kind of scuffed up. It's a little bit pre-sanded. If you get a sheet that's all the way clear and not pre-sanded per se for you have to do that yourself. You have to take that step. It just makes it a little bit more toothy and makes that ink adhere a little bit better. So now you can see I'm just adding the heart accents, and I do take a Sharpie pen on a couple of the images that didn't quite stamp out well, or maybe my thumb did get in there, and I just wanted to experiment and see if I could cover that up with a Sharpie. And I left this in the video just so you can tell or see that if you don't cover the whole area with a Sharpie, you can tell a difference in the blackness once it's done. So now I did take them down to my oven, and I preheated that to 350, and then I put the Shrinky Dinks in the oven for about 3 minutes, and they come out to be about 20% of the size that they originally were. So I'm just laying these on each of the stamps so you can see the size difference, and they're pretty thick. But I think they're pretty neat. And this is a matte finish shrink film that I have. So it doesn't have as glossy as some that you can get on the market. And those are all the ones right there that I did. I did do quite a few, because once you just like I don't know about you, but once I start something like that, I don't want to stop. So I had to pull myself away from making the shrinky dinks and move on to the card. Okay, for my shaker frame today, I used Lawn Fawn's stitch scalloped rectangle frames, and I used the second to the largest. And on red cardstock, I just cut out that frame and got that all ready to go. And I wanted to back it with this really pretty paper that came with the February subscription. I love the Maker Forte papers. They're nice and thick. And just in case you missed my last video or my last project, you can foil on them. They come with a toner ink on them already, so you can hot foil right onto the paper. So I'm just marking that so I can cut it down slightly bigger than the frame. So no measuring, just a quick marking, and I'm taking that down to the little edge and trimming that down. Now I'm using the Maker Forte bone folder that came in the February subscription box. It is a nice addition to my crafting tools for sure. I like the weight of it, and I like how thin the end is. Now I also cut a piece of acetate just slightly smaller than that frame, and I'm going to adhere that with some precision tipped glue. The Barely Art, I love this glue. It dries nice and clear, it's strong, and I love liquid glue, but the applicator on this is fabulous. It's nice and small and can get into all those nooks and crannies. So this has become my favorite glue. Just going to put that around the edge and lay down the acetate. And now we need to add some dimension to this frame so the shaker bits will fit in. So I'm using my Scotch foam tape, and I'm going to double that up, and then I'm going to cut that strip into thirds, and that will be a perfect width to go around that frame. So now I'm just going to lay that around the edge, take off one side of the adhesive, and then just snip it to the length that I need. And you want to make sure that that's butted up really well so none of those little shaker bits and pieces will get out. So after I snip it, sometimes my edge isn't very straight anymore. So what I do is just take off a little bit before I lay it back down. So I just make sure that that's squared again, and then I can butt that right up against the other side of my frame. And now I've decided that this wasn't quite thick enough. I needed a little bit more dimension. So I'm going to go ahead and double that up again. And in hindsight, I think I probably only needed maybe 3 layers instead of the 4 layers of the foam. But I went with 4 layers in this, and now you can learn from what I did. And so I'm just testing it here. That's what I often do to see the dimension that I need. And I thought, well, I thought that I was going to need a little bit more than what I did. So now I'm just going to take off that backing, and I'm going to add that extra layer. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to take an anti-static powder tool, go around the edges so all of these little bits and pieces will not stick to those edges, and will shake. I am using my friend Neha's gems and seed beads from her Etsy shop called Crescent Creation. I will have that linked below. She has lots of goodies in that Etsy shop. Make sure you check it out if you get a chance. And what I'm using in this is the red calla lily seed beads and the Queen of Night jewels, which perfectly fit my theme. And then I'm also throwing in a little bit of Honeybee Stamps Ruby Slippers confetti mix. Just throwing in a couple of those for a little bit more interest and just a little bit more fun stuff in there. And again, I wish that I had filled this up. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and I didn't want to overfill it, but now I think that I could have easily put a little bit more in there. But now I'm going to put those little handmade shaker bits in there that I made with the paw prints. And I'm just going to lift off the edges of the tape now and adhere my backing. And I want to make sure that that's a really good fit so nothing can escape. When your receiver receives that, they're going to be shaking it, and so you want to make sure that nothing's going to go. And it was still a little bit staticky, but that will calm down over time. I just kind of flick it a little bit. That's my method. And you can see all those cute little shaker bits in there, and the little paw prints, they really do look nice. I needed to come up with a sentiment for this card. Because of my cougar theme, I thought, well, thank you would be perfect because we could give that to a coach or somebody that is involved with the school sports in some way. So I found my thank you border from Lawn Fawn and I cut this several times so I could layer it and give that sentiment some dimension as well. So I'm using my Xyron sticker machine for this, and I'm just going to run several of them through. And then when I cut that off, I always press down on my adhesive with the sticker machine. And I find that this process works better when you have really intricate dies like this, and especially when you're going to layer several of them at once. It's just a faster process. And at the time, I wasn't sure if I was going to add the red layer on top. So now I do wish that I had put that through the sticker machine as well, but I didn't, and this many fit through perfectly without having to waste a lot of the adhesive. So now I'm just going to take my time and use my rainbow tweezers and layer those on top of each other. This does take a little bit of time, but it is labor of love, right? All of our cards are. So, but it's also kind of therapeutic. I like repetitive motion, so I kind of like doing stuff like this. So I'm just going to stick those down, and then I decided that I did want to add that red, and I'm still experimenting with that. And because I had the scalloped edges, I didn't want harsh lines on all of the corners, so I went ahead and used my corner rounder and trimmed off all the black frame and then the bottom two corners of the card base. And this is a typical A2 card size, which the base is 5.5 by 4.25. Then my frame is 5.25 by 4, and that gives it a nice 1/8 of an inch all around it. And now I was trying to figure out how exactly I was going to put all my elements together. I didn't want the thank you to be lost underneath all the dimension of the shaker. So I end up ultimately deciding to make it go off kilter, which I also like that. I think that that's a fun look. And it gave that thank you a plenty of space on its own. So that's how I decided to do it. Now I just have to glue that shaker element onto the card base. And then I also have to glue the top layer of the thank you to the white parts. And I often use my stamping block as a weight to hold things down. And I'm just using that precision glue, which comes in really handy. And I'm not worried about getting this perfectly on top. I like the shadow effect. That's personal preference. And so I kind of offset it just slightly on purpose, so that way you can see that white underneath. And then the red kind of outlines that. And now I'm just going to snip off that excess section. And it wasn't quite adhered enough on that side, so I just added a little bit more glue. And this Barely Art glue does dry white, or not clear. It dries clear, so that's perfect. And there was a little bit of that Xyron adhesive right in the middle of each of those circles, so I just went ahead and used the tweezers and kind of cleared that out. And now it's time to add some more of these fun jewels to the front of the card, and also a couple more of those shrink film elements that we made. And now I'm just deciding exactly where I want them. I'm using my fabulous Magic Wand Rainbow tool that picks up those jewels really well. It's one of the best ones that I've used. And it's pretty. It's by far the prettiest one I've used. And now, like I said, I'm just deciding on my placement. I like to make sure that everything balances. That is something that I do in my card making. So if I'm going to do one side, I want to balance it onto the other. And I do like to do odd numbers of things because it's aesthetically more pleasing to the eye. So when I'm laying out my jewels, I do them each in groups of 3. And that helps with that whole balancing. And again, this precision glue, the little tip, is perfect for jewel setting. You just put a little dab of that down, and then you can add your jewel right on top of it. And it adheres wonderfully. Well, this was a super fun card to make. I had a concept of doing like primary colors with it, but then all of a sudden it just kind of took on a life of its own when one of my daughters said, "Oh, Mom, are you making a cougar card?" I was like, "Oh, you're right. This would make a fabulous cougar card." So that's what we have now, and I have a person that's very involved and does a lot for the sports teams, and I plan on giving this to her. We won't let the cat out of the bag in case she watches today. Thank you all so much for stopping in and visiting with me again today. I will have everything linked and listed below for you. Please make sure you stop by the Hedgehog Hollow blog for lots and lots of inspiration from every subscription box that's out there. February's and now March will be coming out very shortly, and it's a very cute one. I cannot wait for March. Thank you so much, everybody. I will see you next week with another fun project. Happy crafting! Take care.